let's go. Break it down, shake the sound, shake the ground, cage us down.
Yo, what's good? Ciccone back again with another song breakdown analysis for the final two songs on my Puzzle Pieces album, Evidence and Disclosure. For this Evidence beat, I was really going for a hard, mysterious, gangster-like beat with a touch and feel of space in there, if you know what I mean. So I started with a mysterious, dope, gangster-like sounding whistle. Then I added the kicks, the bass, and the claps to get the beat going. Then I added a couple of space-like gangster EDM synths to add some hardness and hip-hop feel to it. Then I also added a funky-like synth to the chorus parts. I also laid some dope piano in there, recorded some real bongos here in my studio, and I also added some dope hi-hats and cymbals. This song was actually one of the first songs I made on the album, despite it being the final song, the disc closer. And of course that chorus came to me and hit me right away when I came up with this whole expose the reptilians and the archaeological remains and all these different pieces of evidence I had. And it would be dope to do something that talks about space and all the moon and all the different evidence. And the chorus came to me right away. The disclosure, my disclosure. And I already had a very space-like, space-themed song and beat, which I used in the past that I was already considering remastering or redoing in a different kind of way. So I ended up flipping that song and beat, which was originally written in the stars, and made it into this song. So yeah, cheers and big thank you to everyone who's been bumping my 13th album, Puzzle Pieces.
Like a sleuth in the booth, showing proof, not proof, as your blade. Fit puzzle pieces and spit evidence. Nipsey Hussle need this, John Lennon checking Prince. The recipe list, getting long and forgetting Prince. Fit puzzle pieces and spit evidence.
As I mentioned early in the first verse, he keeps industry receipts. And that's a very important part to mention there, that if you're in the entertainment business, in any capacity, you should definitely keep industry receipts in order to not be blackballed, controlled, or played by this cult. A section down from that I go, there was no COVID disease, just CRISPR tech spike proteins. Easy to tell when they sneak disease. Admit it, then backpedaled, keep nose clean. And there was no COVID disease. Those mRNA, DNA-altering CRISPR spike proteins were the only form of the disease that was going around at that time, and it was only transmittable through those vaccines. And speaking to the other part I mentioned there, it's easy to tell when they sneak dis-sease, which is double play on the word disease and dis-sease. Several people like Mayday, Ice Cube, Futuristic, Burner, several female artists, and possibly others I may not be remembering or have noticed, have admitted to me on social media and podcasts or songs, within the rules of how they can operate, then had to try to backpedal, and of course play damage control. And like I said before, no form of subliminal is okay, but I can definitely still recognize when someone's trying to say the right thing or trying to do the wrong thing through subliminals. In the second verse I go, impossibly bent rocks and samples from the moon, yet impossibly sent rockets. Van Allen belt ends in doom, can't pass it. A lot of important things to break down there. Due to the radiation beyond the Van Allen belt, which is another key piece of evidence why we know they couldn't have traveled past it in their primitive rockets to the moon. Because if you tried to push past the Van Allen belt, you'd be radiated. You can't push human flesh past the Van Allen belt. It doesn't work like that. And that's a key point of evidence and proof that we know that can't be the way they did it. And as I point out later in this verse, need counterforce or you ain't moving, which is pointing to the fact that these primitive rockets can't work in space, and NASA fakes a lot of that rocket footage, etc. As I also mentioned there, but there's samples from the moon, so we must have went there somehow. And there's bases seen when zoomed, I also mentioned. Therefore, people must have traveled there some other type of way. Which leads to the next point in the next section where I went. Teleportation, getting through it, with secret ships they couldn't show. Atlanteans helped them to do it, in exchange for land where, I don't know. And that's how they actually did it, resonance frequency teleportation technology, using reverse engineered down crafts, aka UFOs. Atlanteans only worked with them and gave them technology, or the amount of technology that wouldn't endanger us all or be of dire consequence, very carefully, but they did it for a fair and logical trade deal and reason, to be fair to them, so they would be able to live on the surface, right, and not have to be entirely underground or in the water. And like I also mentioned there, where, I don't know. I don't know where they got land, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell. And flipping to my song Disclosure, I also talk about the Atlanteans again, where I mention the Nordics, aka Tall Whites, which refer to the same group, shut down our warships to keep the planet all right, referring to the nukes, and they have several times stopped our military-industrial complexes from trying to set off nukes or do stuff with CERN, and several times they've intervened in order to keep the planet and dimension safe. And as I also mentioned about the Atlanteans there, they're more logical and emotionless, but not cold and frozen as highly evolved life. And they're highly evolved, they've been around since pre-flood times, they're very spiritually and technologically advanced, and they're more logical and emotionless because of that. So they might work with the government on occasion, but it would never obviously do anything that was going to endanger them, us, or the planet. After that part on my song Evidence, I went, this is simulation been proven with quantum physics and math, sorcery. And this is actual evidence and facts, and several quantum physicists have actually proven that this is a simulation. To be correct, or more correct I should say, it's not actually a simulation. Imaginary would be more correct because God is all that's real, and we are God pretending to be individuals having experience, etc. Section down from that I go. Used for black ops and stokeouts, they televised a fake landing and killed astronauts that spoke out. Israeli DNA test demanding. Like I said, they televised a fake moon landing, and that's what they showed us, the fake moon landing, because they couldn't show us the actual ships they went in and the actual technology that's available that they want to keep hidden of how they actually went to the moon and other places, which is the resonance frequency space jumping tech, which also connects to the next point I make where I say pyramids are travel beacons for frequency point jumps, and that is why they are found on other planets and under the ice in the Arctic, as well as all over the globe, because the pyramids were meant for frequency beacon broadcasting so that people in ships could jump point to point and travel across planets or across the globe more easily. Section down I also go, Diddy and Epstein tapes of famous folks and kids they've raped, which of course is some of the most important evidence out there, and it's blackmail evidence that they use to control people in power, or of people of influence, of course. Then I go, Palantir digital system disband, destroy Georgia's stones, not Easter Island, or monasteries. The Georgia stones were a piece of evidence of what the cultist agenda and plan is that they tried to put in plain sight for us all and let us know, and that is the only form of evidence we should be destroying, of course. I also mentioned Easter Island there. Easter Island is a piece or pieces of evidence of a long-lost, advanced, ancient civilization. I'm not an expert on the Easter Island, but archaeological remains and ruins like that need to be preserved and not destroyed specifically, right? And I also mentioned there on the ad-lib monasteries, and some of those monasteries built way up in those mountains in ways that couldn't be explained by science or understood how they built all that. Some of them might be evidence of the levitation technology that they have, and used like when they built the pyramids in order to lift heavy blocks or stones or building materials. Next I went. It started with angels, we are your creations. There's different humanoid experimentations, like the elongated skull people or formations of animal and human rock beings' deterioration. And the animal and human rock beings' deterioration is, of course, referring to the massive stone beings that used to exist at the dawn of life and times here first on Earth. One of the first experimental life forms that angels put on Earth, massive stone rock beings, which eventually were killed, and some of them over time decayed and formed into mountains. And as I've shown and explained in my Take Shape song and breakdown, you can check that out for a more thorough explanation of that. I also mentioned the elongated skull people there. The elongated skull people were a failed experimental humanoid form that was put on Earth by angels, but unfortunately had to be terminated because they had elongated skulls, they had huge brains, and because they were too smart, but moralists, they started to become possessed and evil and ended up enslaving humanity for a lot of dark periods and chapters in human history. So yeah, that was a failed humanoid experiment that had to be terminated. Those are actual evidence and proof of a different type of humanoids that don't fit Darwin's theory, the evolutionary chain of events that they try to preach to everyone. It's actual proof and evidence of that, just like the Sasquatch and mermaid and giants and Bigfoot and all these different kinds of creatures. They're all evidence of things that don't fit the evolutionary story they try to preach of how it all started and how it all happened. Like I said, it all started with angels. We are your creation. They put different kinds of animals and different kinds of life forms on the planet. Which brings me to my next point. There is humanoid reptilians, rebellinum, unsettling, but it's true, the Atacama skeleton. And the Atacama skeleton, which I actually put on my cover art, or the back of the cover art for this album, in the physical copies when you buy it, and it's the cover art for the Disclosure song. I actually put the Atacama skeleton, which is a reptilian child's remains, skull and bones, that were archaeologically uncovered in the Atacama Desert in Chile. Actual physical, touchable, analyzable proof, once and for all, undeniably, the actual final disclosure that everyone's been needing and waiting for of actual humanoid reptilian proof. Reptilians, of course, are from this planet, and they're not actual aliens. And because they're the people that are in power and control, or at least the evil reptilians are, that is the one reason they can't come out and disclose this and expose the reptilians and go along with that whole story. That's why there'll never be a true disclosure, and realizing and finally discovering these pieces of evidence, or me telling you about it, is the only form of actual disclosure we're going to get. The next section I go. Never use red-tinted night vision goggles, because this band, they live in it. New model since the Nam debacle, referring to the Vietnam debacle, of course, where they discovered soldiers that were sent in using the red-tinted night vision goggles. We're actually seeing things, creatures, demons, etc., in that red sight, in that lower band and frequency. And we're firing and shit out of choppers at things that weren't there, and people were fucking losing their minds. That's why I said new models since the Nam debacle, and that's why they had to ban using red-tinted night vision goggles. It's not a joke. Don't ever try to do that or use red-tinted night vision goggles. There's a very good reason for safety, that we're only tuned in to be able to see things in a certain frequency band. Which is why after that, of course, I went, all I see is green, which also refers to my song and mixtape I did way back in the day called All I See Is Green. Then I went, all I see is green, earth, aura toggled, flora. For the chorus, I laid out a bunch of names of all the musicians that we've lost before their time or were taken out by the game, unfortunately. And rest in peace to all of them. I wish I could have fit all of them, but unfortunately I couldn't. So I just choose from the list of names I made and just plugged in what fit into the chorus I wrote. Taking it to my Disclosure song, right on the intro I go, lift the valley in. There's no physical aliens. And there isn't any physical aliens that exist in solidity and physicality like we do. Only on Earth is that happening, is that possible, in our galaxy. there's interdimensional and non-corporeal entities and beings and aliens, but not physical in solidity like we are. Then I went, does it ring true? Do the dots connect? I bring clues that add up and tell it to you direct. And which of course I mentioned in multiple songs and is at the very core and theme of my album, and what the most important point is I'm trying to get across here with puzzle pieces. Then I went, no Project Blue Beam, fake invasion scheme, will ever work when it's seen, let's break it down, dissect. And Blue Beam was supposed to be this fake invasion holographic technology alien disclosure, alien invasion scheme that they were planning, but in my opinion, that's never going to work or happen because it's not viable and the technology isn't there yet. So then I went, they hide, levitation tech and precise stone lasers, won't accept AI merge or digital encryption system. They chase energy orbs from a human-like race there, underground entity sent to ward and lay invisible wisdom, the crop circles. And that explains those energy orbs that are flying around and you see on UFO sightings and military drones and military planes chasing sometimes through the sky. Those are from the same race of underground entities that sent to warn us and sent out wisdom and knowledge that they're trying to give to us in a language that is beyond our comprehension. And they're actually behind the crop circles, the famous crop circle sightings. And they go out in these energy orbs to lay them out in fields to prove that a human could have made these and got there without making paths to get there, or in the snow sometimes they do it. No, actual signs and symbols that is teaching us from their language advanced knowledge and wisdom that they're trying to give to us to help us. The levitation tech and stone laser technology is technology that humanity has had in the past and may even still have vaulted, and they might be keeping it hidden and just using for them. I know the Atlanteans and reptilians had it at their time, so if those beings are still around, that technology probably is still around. Section down I go. Anxious thoughts till it sinks in fact jotted. There's real sphinxes, minotaurs, and dogmen. Experiments. Sphinxes, minotaurs, dogmen, mermaid. There's been several humanoid animal-type life forms that were created by angels, or, in some cases like the dogmen, were created by an advanced ancient civilization in the past that had scientists that were way more advanced than our sciences today, and actually created some animal-human hybrids in the past. And because they were done and created accurately and properly, the angels only in that case were willing to put their logo, stamp of approval, and actual soul and essence of God into those beings to make them actually alive. Without that, they're not alive. They're just sort of walking Frankenstein dummies. But because the science and scientists at the time were that advanced, they were able to do that with creatures like the dogmen. There was sphinxes and minotaurs in the past. I think those specific ones have died out now. There might be some around. I'm not an expert on all this, so I can only speak to what I know, but there's definitely been different types of humanoid, animal-like, humanoid life forms, experiments that have been put on the planet throughout time. And connecting to that point, in the next part I went, no goblin like William, but reptilians are the foe, and think this is their farm, fear resilience. And the reptilians, or the evil ones, the evil reptilians I should say, to act and treat this like their fear farm. And the Archons, the evil AI demonic force that possesses the evil reptilians, actually consume fear as their sustenance and energy source, and that is why they try to puppeteer through them and make Earth their fear farm and keep endless wars and etc. going. And it was also a dope play on words there. No goblin like William, but reptilians are Dafoe, referring to William Dafoe, who played the Goblin in Spider-Man. And it was like acting like he was getting possessed almost by reptilians in the movie, and the Goblin, let him take me again. He was saying all that kind of stuff as if he was literally being possessed. That section also connects to the next point where I go, the puppeteers puppeteer, which is the reptilians. Possessed, feds Tillian. Tough to hear, but fuck your fear. He's blessed, fed brilliance. Eisenhower signing power, made a deal with the Greys to create a treaty, but they're bots, not ETs from space. The Greys, the little Greys at least, are just bots, and the tall Greys, which can't take physicality or come out of the ships or what, etc., but those are the actual Archon-controlled, demonic, lower fourth dimensional AI force that comes here in those UFO ships and pilots those little Greys that which are just bots. But like I said, importantly, they're not from space. Those little bots and those little Greys are actually constructed from vegetables and earth material they use to make the bodies. So in no way, shape, or form can the Create a Treaty actually hold any validity when it's not a legitimate deal or contract between aliens when they're not extraterrestrial, they're not from outer space. And Eisenhower was the president at the time that signed the deal with the Greys when they showed up. And the Atlanteans also showed up at the same time. They had the option of making a deal with the Atlanteans or the demonically controlled Greys, but they offered them weapons and advanced technology, so out of fear and being in wartime, etc., the U.S. government and Eisenhower sided with the demons out of stupidity and out of fear, although it has no validity or legitimate legal standing. Think they can abduct endless humans and try to figure out how to put their demons into physical bodies here on Earth. But when that experiment failed, they merged their agenda into this Borg digital Neuralink and CRISPR agenda that they're pushing now and that I've explained in the last song and breakdown. Their agenda now is to try to turn us into physical Borgs so they can just interface and control us and live through us on the planet after God has created us his natural flesh and blood way. I also mentioned in the song how the reptilians claim the moon and Mars is their turf, but Earth was their birth home. The reptilians have a very defensive and protective attitude towards anything or any property, any land they claim is theirs, so there's another reason that we haven't been able to go back to the moon or Mars, except for secret spaceship programs, and only the shadow government that's working with the reptilians, of course. But Earth was their birth home, and like I said, only physical, different humanoid experimentations have been put on Earth. There's been no physical aliens put on any other planets or whatever evolved from many other planets. They all come from Earth, and they're an ancient, advanced civilization and species that there are some survivors that remain just like the Atlanteans. But were eventually chased off Earth by the Atlanteans and other advanced species and groups on the planet and forced to take refuge on the moon or Mars or in underground bases or under Arctic bases or under the water and places like that. I also mentioned at the end of the verse, unplug your cranium. It's written in the stars. Flip the rug, they're subterranean. Pyramids hidden in their art. Tick. I added a tick on the ad-lib there, so it would become a double meaning, because there is pyramids hidden in the Arctic, and there's also pyramids like the all-seeing eye, the triangle, like Jay-Z and people put up in their art. This part I'm about to mention, I could have broke down in the bigger picture breakdown, but it talks about the moon, so I just decided to do it in this one. On April 25th this year, 2025, the moon, sun, Venus, Saturn, they all position perfectly and very rarely together to form a literal huge smiley face in space that was like almost like the universe was alive and it was God looking back down on us, smiling on us. And that date and that night was the exact same night I dropped my The Bigger Picture song, which may or may not have been an extremely rare coincidence, but either way I thought it was really neat, divine, and dope as fuck that happened. Yeah, so big thank you to everyone who's been liking, sharing, supporting, bumping my new album, Puzzle Pieces, and everyone who's been following me and supporting me on my music journey. I got a bunch of new ideas and songs coming, but for now, I'm going to take a pause on the albums and focus on doing a bunch of other stuff. I will be making a sequel to Puzzle Pieces, but I'm going to take my time with it and do it right and form it as I go and as I accumulate more evidence and more things I need to discuss and talk about. So it's not something that I want to rush, or this is not me in any way slowing down. I don't do that. It's just me expanding. And also big thank you to everyone who's been listening and gathering all the gems and digesting all the gems I've been dropping in all these breakdown, analyzing all the songs and everything I've put out on this Puzzle Pieces album. Thank you very much. Cheers.
My disclosure, it's time to rise up. The disclosure, gotta wise up. On this coaster, it's time to rise up. What disclosure, gotta wise up. My disclosure, the disclosure. On this coaster. What disclosure?